Yo, what's up guys, Complies here. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you a whole bunch of different settings that we can do to help us see enemies easier in game. I'm going to be going over the optimal in-game settings. I'll be covering a few things we need to tweak in our video config files, and then I'll be showing you guys some Nvidia related tips within the control panel and also in the Nvidia overlay. So make sure you guys stick around for all that. I have done a video similar to this in the past, but there is a few new things that I found and I've been able to refine it a little bit. But before we start the video guys, if you do enjoy my content and my videos help you, please drop a like and don't forget to comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications as well so you don't miss any future uploads. But that's enough for that guys. Now let's get straight into the video. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to be doing is changing our settings in game. Now real quick, I have all my settings on default just to show you guys the difference. But what I really want you guys to pay attention to is the shadows on the side of the screen. Notice how you can barely see these rocks right here. Now this is what it's going to look like, all of my settings in place. Notice that there's a huge difference there. This is going to let you see enemies a lot easier, and it's going to help you pick up on a lot more info that you may not get without these settings. So now that I've showed you that and that these settings really do work, I'm going to show you guys how to set it up. So we're going to go into our menu, go to settings, and then our video tab. The first thing we're going to do is look at our resolutions. Now if you're playing 16:9 and your monitor is 1080p, you definitely want to keep 1920x1080, as dropping lower than that is going to pixelate your game a lot. It's going to make it look blurry, which is going to make everything harder to see. And also for all you guys playing stretch resolution, I'd recommend 1728x1080. It's going to be a lot more clear and less pixelated than 1680x1050. I have multiple videos covering how to do that, so if you need help setting up that resolution, I got you covered. Now for 4:3 and 5:4, these resolutions are going to be pretty blurry no matter what, so generally I'd recommend doing 16:10. However, there's been a new workaround that allows you to play 4:3 and 5:4 in any stretch resolution you want. Pretty good, but keep in mind these are going to be a lot more blurry. However, for 4:3 resolution, I'd recommend doing 1440x1080, and for 5:4 resolutions, I'd recommend 1350x1080. I wouldn't go any lower than these because, like I said before, it's going to become very pixelated, very blurry, make it very hard to see. You will get slightly higher FPS, but personally, I don't think that trade-off is worth it, because if you're running these stretch resolutions, you're already getting a pretty good FPS boost anyways, and that visual clarity is going to be a lot more important. But as of right now, I play 16:9, 1920x1080, so I'm going to keep it on that. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is our brightness. This is one that some people might not agree with me on, but I've been playing on 65, 70 brightness for a long time now. I actually was on 80 at one point. Now sure, this may make your game look sort of washed out. It's going to make everything look very white, but it's going to brighten up a lot of those dark shadowy areas, which is very important. So for the amount of brightness, I'd recommend anywhere from 60 to 80. Obviously higher is going to be better, but not everyone's eyes may be able to adjust to the high brightness, or you might just not like the way it looks. But if you're playing on the default, I definitely recommend bumping it up to 60 or higher. Find what works best for you. Just make sure you bump that up from the default and you'll be good. Next thing we're going to be talking about is field of view. Now most pro Apex players, or the really good players, they generally play on 110. There's a few exceptions like Shiv and even Shroud who both play on 90 FOV. I wouldn't recommend going that low, but bumping your FOV up is going to give you a lot more visual info. It's going to make it a lot easier to spot enemies that may be further on your side that you wouldn't be able to see with the lower FOV. So for FOV, I'd recommend anything 104 and above. Personally, I've been playing on 106 recently and I've been really loving it. Now sure, 110 might give me a little bit more info, but I've noticed that my aim feels a lot more crispy on 106. I'm hitting a lot better shots. My tracking is a lot better. So if you want to mess around with this a little bit, try things out. But like I said, anything 104 and up should be good. Next thing we're gonna go to is sprint view shake. You want to make sure that's on minimal. That's going to make it easier to see things when you're running. You're not going to have as much screen shake. Your character isn't going to bob back and forth as much. So now we're going to be going on to the advanced video settings. I'm just going to give a quick run through of most of them, but I'll be explaining the ones that you can keep that don't have too much of an impact on your game. Now generally for starters, for the best performance and the best visual clarity and least amount of clutter, you usually want to have all your settings on the very lowest, which is exactly what I've done here. I put everything to the possible lowest value except for a couple of things which I'll be explaining. So if you guys haven't done that, make sure you do that. Put everything low or disabled. There's no need for any of these if you're trying to get the best performance out of your game and improve. However, there are a couple of exceptions. Things like anti-aliasing in your textures. Now that all comes down to personal preference. Personally, I don't like anti-aliasing because I feel like it makes my edges pretty blurry and it makes it kind of hard to see at a distance. But I know there are some people who like the edges smooth. They don't like those jagged lines. However, I feel like it makes my game look a little bit more crispy. It makes it look a lot more clear. And also texture streaming budget, I have mine on high because I like my game to look a little bit good. You know, I paid money for these skins. I like to see them. Would I have a little bit less visual clutter with them off? Yes, but it's very minuscule. However, the difference is there, so if you do want the very best, keep those textures off, but it does make your game look a whole lot better. So now real quick, this is what it looks like with just the video settings enabled in game. Now you can already see that those sides are brightened up just a little bit, but once we get everything done, it's going to brighten it up a whole lot more and those shadows are going to be a lot less noticeable. Now let's go over to our gameplay tab and I'll show you guys a couple of settings that we can enable to reduce the amount of visual clutter. First thing is make sure your interact prompt style is on compact. This is going to be less text popping up on your screen when you run over a gun or a heal, a grenade, etc. Also make sure that you have button hints off so you don't have a wall of text on the side of your screen giving you what each ability does for a given button. Crosshair damage feedback, make sure that's off. When you hit someone in a game, you get a very distinct sound, and that's enough to know that you're hitting your enemy. You don't need that crosshair popping up on your screen and taking up that extra space. My tracking has improved a ton when I've turned this off, so I'd really recommend for you guys to do the same. Now for damage numbers, you want to make sure these are set to stacking. This gives you the least amount of visual clutter. If you have floating on, it's going to be a big wall of numbers going over each hit that you get, which takes up a lot of unnecessary space. So make sure this is set to stacking. Ping opacity, make sure that's set to faded. Next, we can come down to colorblind mode. Now I used to recommend that most people run Tritanopia, which really brightens up your game and gives it a really nice vibrance. However, with the most recent patch, they fixed it to allow people with actual color blindness to see the numbers more clearly, which made it very confusing for all the people who are using it, because now when you get somebody flush, instead of the numbers being red, they're now purple, which makes it really easy to get mixed up with purple armor. So I don't mess with it at all anymore. I just have mine on default. However, if you think that's something that doesn't bother you or you can get over it pretty quickly, then yeah, definitely turn on Tritanopia. It's going to make your crosshair yellow, which is a lot better. You're going to be able to see it a lot easier, and plus your game is going to be a lot more vibrant. Your colors are going to pop more. But that's going to be it for our in-game settings. Now we're going to go change a couple of things in our video config file. So in order to find our video config file, we're going to go down to our Windows search bar. We're going to type in saved games. We'll click on that. We'll go to respawn, apex, local, and it's going to be right here, videoconfig.txt. Now we're going to be changing a couple of things in here, and I'll explain it a little bit too. If you guys don't want to mess with this and you guys just want to use all my settings, I will leave links to this down in the description below. There you'll find my video config and also my auto exec, which I'll go over on how to do that as well. So now that we're in our video config, after we've got all the in-game settings that we want, the first thing that we're going to go down and change is the Lod Switch Skill. And I think when you set it to low, it's 0.3, I believe, but I lower mine to 0.2, which just gets rid of a little bit of clutter on the map. There's less items that spawn in. However, if you go too low, it starts to mess with some of the character models and make everything look really blocky. So I just keep mine at 0.2. I think that's a pretty good value. All of these shadow settings here, you want all of these to be 0. But now we're going to go down a little bit and we're going to find the one called setting.csm enabled. Now in your guys' file, if you haven't changed any of this, it should be set to 1, as you can't fully disable shadows within the game. This is the most important change. You guys really need to make sure you do this. You need to make sure your CSM enabled is set to 0. And what this does is it disables most of the shadows in game, which gives you a really good visual improvement, and it also gives you a really good FPS boost as well. So you guys need to make sure that you have this set to 0. A lot of these other settings like your gamma, your res, and your stream memory, those are all going to be dependent on what you set in your game, so you don't really have to mess with those. But once you've entered in those, all you do is come up here, hit file, save, then we'll X out of that. And then we'll go back to where your video config.txt is, and we're going to right click it, go to properties, and make sure this is set to read only. Now this is going to lock those settings in, so every time you boot up Apex, it's going to force these settings. So if you want to change something, like say your textures, your anti-aliasing, or anything else, your resolution, you're going to have to come back in here, uncheck read only, hit apply, and either change it in your video config or change it in game. And then when you're done, you come back here, hit read only again, hit apply, and then hit OK. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing is giving you guys my auto exec. I've done this in a previous video. A lot of you guys have already seen this, so I won't explain it too much. So in order to find where our auto exec is located, we're going to go to our Steam. We're going to right click on Apex Legends, go down to properties, go to local files, and then hit browse. We're going to go to the folder titled CFG, and then some of you might have it, some of you might not. There's going to be a file called autoexec.cfg. If you don't have this, all that you have to do is go to your config default PC. We're going to right click it, copy, then we're going to right click again, and we'll hit paste. Now we're going to right click the copy of it. We're going to hit rename. Now all you have to do is type in autoexec. Don't type in anything else. Hit enter and make sure it says autoexec.cfg. I'm not going to hit enter because I already have one made, but this is what you guys have to do if you don't have one. So now that you've done that, we're going to double click and go into that. Now your guys's might be blank, it might not. If it is, it's very simple. I have the link down in the description below, but we're going to go to this website called Pastebin where I've copied down my autoexec. Now it's really simple. All you do is you come here, you hit raw. Now all we're going to do is hit Control A. We're going to make sure that everything is highlighted. We're going to hit copy. Now we're going to go back into our auto exec. We're going to hit Control A once again. We're going to delete everything. Then we're going to hit Control V. Now this is going to copy in all the settings that were in that paste bin. And these are the settings that I've been using for months. And notice a really big FPS boost, and my game also just looks better as well. So once you've pasted that in, come up here, file, save. You don't have to put your auto exec on read only, but you definitely can if you want to. So now that we've done that, we're going to go back into our Steam. Once again, we'll right click Apex Legends, go to properties, and you want to make sure this command is in right here, plus exec auto exec. That's going to run each individual command that we put into our auto exec. If you don't have this in your Steam launch options, nothing in your auto exec is going to go through. It's just going to be a dead file. It'll sit there and do absolutely nothing. So make sure you have this pasted in right here. So now that's it for all of our game file tweaks. Now I'll be showing you guys a few Nvidia specific things that we can do to help brighten up our game. So the first thing that we're going to do is go into our Nvidia control panel. In order to do that, we're going to right click, hit Nvidia control panel. And from here, we're going to go to the tab called desktop color settings. So we'll click into there and scroll down to where it says digital vibrance. Now a lot of this is going to be personal preference. However, I'd recommend anything 70 and above. This is going to make your colors a lot more saturated and make everything pop a lot more. 90 might be a little bit too much for a lot of people, so try out 70. See if you can work with 80. However, anything 70 and above should be good. Don't mess with any of these other settings yet, as we'll be doing some of that when I go over the Nvidia filters. Now, I get a lot of people in my stream asking me how my game looks so colorful, you know, how it looks so good. This is the answer right here, your digital vibrance. Now that we're in here, I'll show you guys my Nvidia game filter settings. Shout out to my boy Iceman Isaac. He does educational Warzone content, and I actually found out about this from him. Now, I know there's some people who don't like playing with filters because it does affect your FPS just a little bit, but for most people, I think you should be fine. The FPS hit is minimal. So we're just going to go into our Nvidia overlay. Then we're going to go over to our game filters. Now, by default, yours should be off. Now, real quick, I'll trigger them both on and off just so you can see the difference between them. And this isn't even with them cranked up. This is on lower settings. That's between off and on, off and on. Now, these differences on screen might look pretty minimal, but when you actually see them in person, you see just how much of a difference it really makes. And like I said before, this isn't even with the settings cranked up. This is with them pretty mild. So all you have to do to enable this, and the first filter that we're going to add is called details. And the ones that I found have worked best for me are going to be sharpen at 0, my clarity at 0. I keep my HDR toning anywhere from like 50 to 80, and I keep my bloom on 0. Now real quick, I'll show you guys the difference with the HDR toning. So this is what it looks like with none. You can notice those shadows are pretty much back to normal. However, when you crank that up, it really brings out those things hidden in that darkness. And then the next filter that we're going to be doing is brightness and contrast. And the ones that I found have worked best for me is when I have my exposure on 0. I keep my contrast at around 25 to sort of combat that washed out look that you get when you bump these settings up. Keep my highlights on 0. I keep my shadows anywhere from -40 to about -80, whatever you guys want. See what works best for you. Now, real quick, I'll show you the difference between 0 and the max setting. So you can already notice how it really brightens up this dark area. However, it's really strong and it makes your game look really bright and washed out, which is why I wouldn't recommend cranking this up all the way. That's why I like to keep mine around like 40, 50, 60, something around that range. And I keep my gamma on 0. So this is what it's going to look like with all of these settings enabled. It makes such a huge difference, especially in these dark areas. And real quick, I want to show you guys what it looks like in the well-lit areas. Now, for some people, this might be too bright. Even if it is, I'd recommend sticking with it, getting used to it, because it's honestly such a big difference. You can see so much more, which is going to allow you to get better info and make much better decisions. I know I've said it multiple times, but just try to find what works best for you. Try to find those best settings. This is more just like a basic guideline, but it is going to require a little bit of tweaking on your guys' end. But guys, that's going to be it for me. If you made it this far and stuck it out to the end, I really appreciate it so much. I know these settings are going to help you guys out a ton. I noticed a big difference in my game when I do them, and I'm really sure you guys will be able to as well. But guys, if this video does help you and you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like and a comment. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications as well. If you want to support me further, you can become a channel member. I will have links to that down in the description below. Links to all my other social medias will be down there as well. I have Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Discord, got everything. So if you want to connect with me further, that's a great way to do it. Please be sure to follow me on Twitch, where I'm streaming Apex just about every other day now. But yeah, that's going to be it for me, guys. Like I said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it can help a lot of you. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.